Okay, we're waiting to go live here on LinkedIn, and we're going to wait just a few moments till this catches up. We've got a really good episode for you guys today. I'm very excited to introduce my guest in a little bit, and it's going to be about 20 to 30 minutes of some jam-packed content, which will be really, really exciting. Okay, we're officially up on LinkedIn. So welcome everyone to our fifth installment of this little series called Lessons from the Leaderboard to Leadership. My name's Rebecca. I am the owner of Rise Up Consulting, where we specialize working with corporate sales leadership teams to have an immediate impact on recruiting, retention, and revenue. And every other week, I have a different sales leader sharing their thoughts and their journey from sales to sales leadership. And the reason that we have this specific niche and I bring people to talk about this specific transition is it is virtually ignored in the sales world. It's one of the most difficult positions to ever be in, coming from success in sales and then with no or little experience trying to succeed as a sales leader. And because no one really talks about it, we have really talked about it. We're digging in and having the value of learning from experienced salespeople on what they learned, what they wish they would have known. The goal is to shorten your learning curve and to think through what do you need to do as an individual to make yourself more valuable in the sales leadership marketplace. And also for corporate organizations where you are promoting sales leaders all of the time, you are very concerned about the strength of your sales leadership pipeline and your leadership bench. And you're thinking, what do we need to do? What can we do to strengthen that? So today, I've got Tony Jalan with me. Did I say your last name right, Tony?
You're close, Jalan. Jalan.
Jalen. Okay, I said it and I was like, oh man.
Yeah, you knew
So
it.
even though I can't pronounce Tony's last name right, we've known each other for a bit. We met through one of my old coworkers who actually works with Tony. And I had reached out to Ben Heinen who at Heartland Payment Systems about something. It might have been a course I was trying to sell or something in the past. And he said, you need to talk to my manager, Tony, because I have a really good sales leader. And that's actually one thing that I hear all the time too with emerging sales leaders. They either go, I had a great sales leader, I got lucky that I could learn from, or I got no support at all. So Ben had support, and he referred Tony to me. So Tony and we've done like some clubhouse events, which I don't go on there anymore, but we've done those in the past. We've spoken several times, and I wanted to have you on because every time you speak, there's so many great nuggets to walk away from, and your experience and what you're doing now is a little different, but very valuable. So Tony, can you introduce yourself real quickly, and then I'll start firing away on some of the questions I'm really excited to ask you.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm Tony Jalan. First off, Rebecca, thank you for having me. I'm glad to be part of your conversation. And in terms of recruitment, retainment, and increasing revenue, like that's what sales is about. And I've had the opportunity to be in sales now, going on, geez, 25 years. So I know I only look like I'm, 21, but yeah. So that's a little background on myself in Wisconsin, Milwaukee, Wisconsin. Currently working with Heartland Payment Systems, a Fortune 500 company, and actually they just got ranked again one of the top companies to sell for in the U.S. It actually just ranked 12th, so it's just pretty exciting.
That's amazing. That's awesome.
So that's a little bit about myself. I love to fish. I love to spend time with family, and I think a lot where I really focus on is developing myself as a leader so I can give to others. I believe that it's hard to give what you don't possess yourself, and a lot of it comes to growing yourself as a leader first, so that way you have an inside out kind of growth pattern.
And I know you're very intentional with how you prep for your one-on-ones. You're actually very intentional about the development of your team. I don't actually, we might get into that later today, but this is more about your transition. But I know that you do so much with that. And I will say, Tony did teach me probably a year ago. You were talking about one-on-ones. This is the only thing. This is the only thing I'll actually say because I think it's a valuable lesson. I always say, Tony taught me this. But when you're doing one-on-ones, what I would do as a sales manager when I was leading teams is I would always bring their stats to me and I'd have their stuff ready. And then I'd preach to them about where they were, where they weren't. And you told me, well, if the salespeople bring their stats to the meeting, it's more empowering for them. They're going to know their numbers. You don't have to tell them where they are because they know. And I teach that now to my corporate clients. I spout that off all the time, and it's so smart, and it feels less micromanagement. And that was just like a tiny tip that you gave me. It wasn't a tip you gave me; it came up in a conversation. I went, "That's really smart."
Oh, thank you. Well, I think too, in regards to that, having people doing their own kind of like self reviews, they don't come to it as defensive anymore, right? Like they know what to expect of the meeting. Like reality's reality, right? I mean, the numbers don't lie, and there's just facts versus data, and the facts show what's going on. So it allows you to have more collaborative conversation and a development conversation versus just a managing conversation. Because a lot of times, if the numbers aren't quote unquote where they should be, in my experience, they'll come up with a plan of how to fix it. And your job is just to support them and encourage them along that path.
Yeah, and maybe alter their plan if they didn't think a couple things through and help them strategically execute.
Hmm.
Yep, for
Yeah.
sure. Okay, awesome. So I'm really curious to hear about some of your earlier days because you and I actually have not spoken about this in detail. So can you tell us about your path, like your start in sales, and then that how the first transition went into sales leadership?
Yeah. So is it when we talked about this question, I actually got my first exposure to sales from my dad. And when I was like 7 or 8 years old. And how that came about was my dad was a manual laborer. And we come from North Dakota, and there's a lot of farms out in North Dakota. And I would witness my dad going on farmers' doors, knocking on their door, asking to tend to their fields. So that was like actually my first exposure to it. So like that's what you do. If you want to make something work, you gotta go out and ask for it. Because if you don't ask for it, you're not gonna get it. And then from there, my actual true sales job, I guess you could said, was a blind ad that I answered talking about manager training. And I was excited about it. I mean, I just got promoted to like a restaurant manager and whatnot. But you know what? I can do sales. I just had this kind of belief in myself. And lo and behold, it was a manager trainee to sell Kirby vacuums. Now, we didn't call them Kirby's at the time. They're home cleaning systems. But that was my introduction to it. And what it really introduced me to, I mean, I guess my first introduction to this thought came from McDonald's is the power of having systems, right? The reason why McDonald's are so successful is that the least skilled person can do the job. And if you have a system, it allows you to scale. And so that was really my first introduction, door to door sales, knocking on people's doors to say, hey, do you want to get your carpets cleaned? And then they literally had a script for us to follow. And if you did this script, you'd get a sale. So that was my first introduction to sales. And then got a bad car crash, almost died actually while doing that. Yeah,
What?
yeah, it was crazy. I went underneath an F-350. Wasn't good. Wasn't good. You look at the car, you're like, there's no way Tony survived that accident.
I didn't know that.
Yeah,
That's crazy. I think that's a long story for another day, but I would love to hear that one. That's insane.
yeah, it was. And the craziest thing about that story is I had gone 3 weeks without a sale. so it was a full commission sales job. And so, but yeah, but then from there, because I couldn't drive anymore, I literally had a fear of driving. I worked for a telemarketing firm and we sold long distance sales. And my goal for some weird reason was to go into leadership there. I wanted to be the trainer. I felt like I can coach people. And at age of going into 20 years old, I was put into the corporate sales trainer position. And then did other sales. I did marketing and advertising. I did membership sales, owned a few businesses as well. And then I came to Heartland in 2007. I've been here ever since.
Okay, that's amazing. I also have some door-to-door experience, which so that's I didn't know we both did that. Um, do you want to explain for all the Gen Z what long distance sales are? Just kidding, don't
You're right.
like
There's this,
what? What's long distance? Why you need to sell people on long distance? Isn't it included with the cell phone?
yeah, right, right. There was no, oh yeah, you paid it per minute back then. I
Oh my
used,
gosh, that's awesome. Okay, so you've had a wide range of different, the evolution of that was really different. But, it's interesting. I've got a client, one of the sales leaders that I coach, along with several other sales leaders at his organization. He got to start at Walmart in leadership, and they have a lot of systems as well. And what you said is like the least skilled person can do the job. Then you take that into following a script. Like I had a verbatim script like you did when I sold educational books door to door, when you sold the vacuum cleaners door to door. And if you follow the script, you'll be successful. Well, these days we have more of a more educated, I don't want to say more educated buyer, but buyers are more experienced in what they expect. So like the old way of selling, the system still works, but you can't follow it exactly the same way anymore. But it really, if there's any salespeople on here looking to be sales leaders, if you aren't familiar with a system for sales, you're not going to get promoted really. Or if you do get promoted into sales leadership, you better find one because it's going to make you a more effective leader by far.
right. And I think one of the things I was told when I was early in my career here at Heartland, I mean, to be honest with you, I actually turned down the first two promotion opportunities at Heartland. And I'll never forget that January of 2008. I get this email saying, "Congratulations, you're now a territory manager." And I called my manager. I'm like, "What's this about?" They're like, "Tony, you're playing small. You need to get into management." I'm like, "All right, well, now what do I do?" And talent will get you only so far as an individual producer. And I'll never forget that I did certain things a certain way, and my leader at the time said, "Well, Tony, can everyone do that? Can 70% of people do that?" And then you think, well, maybe not. So I had to really look at, okay, what processes do I have that are scalable and duplicatable?
Yep, that is such an important piece of making that transition. Like what made you successful in sales was you were probably leaning into your strengths and like using your competitive edge, right? Like using you, really zoning in on those talents and innate strengths, and that's not duplicatable for everyone else. And I think one of the biggest problems new sales leaders have is they don't think they did anything special. Like it's just so inherent into their DNA of selling, where they're like, I don't think that it's really easy for me. Why can't everyone do that? And it's not easy, because we have all these different makeups. So when you're an individual contributor, you are, how do I zone in on my talents and strengths and competitive edge? And when you're a leader, that doesn't matter if it's not duplicatable. It's how do I get my team to lead. So I'm glad you mentioned that. Then you had a sales leader said, Tony, can everyone do that? Because but that's actually interesting. So you said something and I was going to ask you about it, but I'd love to talk about that. So I did a survey last year, my Leaderboard to Leadership survey, because there's very little data on this. And I asked a question like, did you put your name in for the promotion? Was it encouraged from someone up above, like, hey, we see leadership potential in you? And yours was, hey, you're now a sales leader. So
Hmm.
it wasn't something you were like gunning for and interviewing for. It was based on your previous success. They were like, you need to be doing this.
Right. It was, and that was the case. And I think some people shy away from leadership because they think, oh, it's more reporting, or it's more this. But I think one is to receive that as a huge compliment that someone sees enough in you that they say, you know what, you can make an impact on others, right? And leadership is not about convenience, right? I think when you're a successful salesperson, you get systems in place and processes in place that y- you can conveniently do things, right? But also, in your leadership, it's no longer about you. It's not about you. and it's going to be very inconvenient at times. Going out in the sales field with that new hire, and all of a sudden they book 5 appointments, and all 5 of those appointments are rescheduled or not good appointments. Well, it's not like they purposely tried to set up for failure. And I think as a new sales leader, that's sometimes a difficult thing to think because you did it until you figured it out. And when you're developing people, sometimes they got to do it until they figure it out. But as a sales leader, it's important that you're there alongside them in developing them.
Yeah, I cannot stress how important it is to do ride-alongs with your sales team, and also do run-throughs or role playing with them in one-on-ones. I've got a client that I was like, we're gonna do role playing, and they're all like, we don't do that. And it was like role play were 2 4-letter words. So I was like, we'll call it a run through.
Yeah.
People have this like adverse, like, I don't want to do that. But it's so important to see your sales team. What are they doing? Can they make the mistakes in front of you instead of in front of a customer? Like seeing how they're executing. And Tony, you just kind of started alluding to this, but some of the differences between sales and sales leadership. I have like a very structured, like, here's the differences in all of this. But what do you feel are the biggest differences? Because it's like a mindset shift. It's the shift of knowing these differences to be successful as a sales leader. The status quo, it's always been kind of taught in the past, is if you've been successful before, you'll be successful in the future, right? Like success leaves trails. And that's actually not true
No,
because you
it's
have
not.
to shift it differently. So what do you think are the biggest differences between sales and sales leadership? Do you have
Some of the
7 hours?
no, right there. I mean, I think number one, recognizing it's no longer just about you. When you're individual producer, it's only about your sales, right? It's about your customers. Now it's about in what ways can I serve my team? In what ways can I meet them where they're at? I think number two is time management. When you go into sales leadership, you're getting exposure to different parts of the organization that you didn't get exposure to as a salesperson. So not only do you have salespeople and maybe some of your former customers demanding of your time, you have colleagues. You also have sales leadership that's also asking you of your time. So I think that's a big important part. And like, there's a transition of time management. You've got to be on point. You got to have certain times of the days in which you honor certain parts of your business. Like you have areas of your business that are important, but when you're in an area, you got to focus on that area. Um, I think number three is the difference is you have an increased amount of self-awareness, right? You've got to really work on yourself even more so. Because I think when you go into sales leadership, you get exposed. The higher you go up, you get exposed for your strengths and your areas of opportunity for growth.
Mhm. Yep, those are so good. Time management. When I did that survey, it was the number one struggle for new leaders because it's so different in sales. And in sales, the number one factor that determines the top performers in sales from everyone else is their time management. They are able to fit more valuable time, more activity, smarter focus, smarter prospecting, right? Like they're not filling their pipeline with like deals they know aren't going to close because they have to get their calls in. Like they're very intense. Like the way that they manage their time and efficiency is different than everyone else, but you do that differently. And yeah, self-awareness and development, absolutely. There are a lot of, Heartland's a very large organization, so they have leadership development and sales training. But if your organization, if they don't have it, you know where to call. But if they do have it, that should not be the only development that you get. You have to, what you were just saying, Tony, you have to take it upon yourself to do more, to develop yourself more, and be very self-aware. And you see how your ego shows up. You see how you project things on other people, um, um, your confidence, all of that. It's imposter syndrome. That was the word I was looking for. All of that shows up. And I wholeheartedly agree with all three of your points.
Because it takes work. I mean, you'll get to a certain point in like growing your sales teams and your organization, even if you're from a corporation or a small business, right? But your growth, your income will never outpace your own personal growth. If you look to my left here, I have actually a huge whiteboard, and you talk about external sources. All right, so I not only coach professionals, I call them corporate athletes. I also coach sports athletes. And I'm running through my board of, okay, like why we're doing certain things, and I'm having to get an understanding of myself to be able to communicate that message to them. And growing sucks sometimes, and it's very uncomfortable. And I feel a lot of times when we get into negative language, like we're saying, oh, I don't need to do that, or we talk not highly of ourselves to ourselves, is because the ego is in the way. That's the ego. And if you want to grow as a leader, I said you got to leave that ego at the door. And that's hard to do at times, especially if you're a successful individual producer. You feel I should just be able to do it. I don't need to do those things. That's not true because it's hard
Mhm.
to give what you don't possess.
Yep. Yep. Yeah, I that reminds me of a conversation. I was calling on a sales leader who will not be named,
Mhm.
but talking to him about doing, sales leadership development. So he actually coached he's got sales leaders, that he actually coaches. And he said to me, he goes, Rebecca, I'm fine. I make a lot of money. I'm good. I know all this stuff. And I hung up the phone, and I wasn't like upset he didn't hire me, because you and I both know there are people we don't want to work with. So
Right.
some of those initial conversations, we go, I wouldn't work with them anyway. But I just felt so bad for his team, because he thought he had arrived. And maybe according to his bank account, maybe he did, and that's what he said. He goes, I'm making enough money. I've got other, income streams. And I was like, it's not about that. Like, that's not the gauge if you're being successful. And that is a sign. And I fell into that trap as well when
Mhm.
I was in my insurance business. I was at the tippy top. I had the number 2 team of $1 billion company. And I was like, I know all there is to know. Look how good our team did. Look how smart I look as a sales leader. And that was when I started to fail, because I thought I had arrived. And I
Mhm.
think I'm sensitive because I actually made that mistake. But you're absolutely right. If you ever get to that point, just know you're in your comfort zone. That's a sign to expand it. And really, if you're just consistent about the development, like I know you are, and like I know that you teach your sales leaders at Heartland, then you're going to be okay.
Well, and the thing is too, the scoreboard, quote unquote, this guy's checking account, you know, can be distracting. You know, when we have a stellar month, like last month, our team just absolutely crushed it in June. Like they crushed it. We had 50% of our team do over 180% of their sales goal, and I should be going, "Hey, yay, awesome!" And I'm excited for that moment. But I know it was because of the work we did 60, 90 days ago, right? And then I'm like, okay, what areas are we doing well, and what's some areas we can double down on to get better? And sometimes you need to fall in order for that to happen. I've done it. I've fallen numerous times, and I've had mentors and coaches to me tell me, "Hey, Tony, don't read your press clippings because it's hard not to." Right? We all like, getting our buckets full with recognition and appreciation. I like it. I like hearing my name. It's a pretty great name, Tony. I haven't met a Tony I didn't like. um,
I actually haven't either. That's so funny you say that. Yeah, I know a ton of Tonys, but I've never met one that I was like, I don't like him.
right. But it's like, um, I was talking to another leader, and they're saying, gosh, this person's like this, and this person's like this, and it was like a common theme that they're all having that same issue with. And I asked them, I'm like, so you just told me about 6 different people that are having the same issue, 6 different individuals. He's like, yeah, but who's the common denominator in that? He goes, "Oh, you're trying to say it's me." I'm like, "Yes, I am. I'm not trying, I am."
I'm not trying. I am. Yeah. Yeah.
And I go, "Have you thought about a different way that maybe you need to communicate to them? Because, there's 6 people having the same problem, you know, and you're the one steering the ship." And that's a hard thing to take in as a leader, but that's why you have external people. This is why you have a good leadership to be open and vulnerable with and say, "Give me that feedback. How am I really doing?" Because feedback is a gift.
Yep. It's not, feedback isn't fixing anyone. It's literally a gift. Yep.
Mhm.
Yep. There are, yeah, I'm going to stop the tangent. Did you see me? I almost went down that tangent, and I know we're running out of time, so I don't want to, but absolutely, feedback is so critical. The data says people will do more if their direct manager actually acknowledged and gave them feedback and recognized them for the work that they do. So if there's any sales leaders watching this still, and they're like, you know what? I need to be recognizing my team more often. You absolutely do. Tony, another question I wanted to ask you, which is really, it's one of the biggest questions that aspiring and emerging and new sales leaders always want to know from experienced sales leaders is, what do you wish you would have known before you got into sales leadership?
Hmm. There's so many things.
Because I remember even when I became a new mother, and I was so mad. I remember being like postpartum irate at all the other women before me who didn't tell me how awful it was going to be. You know
Mhm.
what I mean? Like, I'm like, well, when does he stop crying? When does he stop the acid reflux? When do I get to sleep? Like all of these things, and all of the women, because you zone it out, and now I've forgotten too. Because it's they go, I don't know, I guess I forgot, because you do what you have to do to kind of survive. So it's really funny, but it's a really interesting question, because some sales leaders say, well, I wish I would have known how emotional it was going to be, or I wish they would have warned me that it wasn't going to be about me anymore. But what do you think? What's like one or two things you just wish you would have known before getting into sales leadership that may have like shortened your learning curve a little bit?
I think it's to remember that it's about the people, and people who feel good about themselves produce the good results. I think a lot of times we'll put numbers before people versus people before numbers. And to dovetail that, to make it the like parentheses B, is understand why you're doing it in the first place. Like, what's your reasons for doing this? And what do you want your team to look like? What's your vision for yourself and your team? Like, where do you want to take this? Because I think sometimes we go into advancements because, oh, we're going to get a raise, right? And then I think once you get into leadership, we focus so much on the how. Well, how are they making their phone calls? How are they doing this? And the how becomes debilitating because there's thousands of ways to go ahead and, you know, do the job. I think you got to understand, okay, what's my outcome I want as a leader here? Like, what is my vision? What do I want it to look like? Then, what are the reasons why I want to do this? And what would be reasons also why I wouldn't want to do this? And then finally, you figure out your roadmap and then write that down.
Mm-hmm.
Have a plan for your first 90, 120 days. It's not about fixing everybody. It's about making sure you're clear on the path that you want to take. And of course, you will adapt and adjust along the way. But I think that's what I hear a lot of people tell me when I talk to them. And also, that was my biggest challenge myself. When I get stressed out, it's because I'm focusing way too much on the how versus the why.
Yep. And then in sales is such a numbers, like you are paid to get results. I mean, that is a
Absolutely.
sales leader's job. And so that's your extrinsic, motivation, and that's your scoreboard. And you mentioned scoreboards. I talk about them all the time. If the scoreboard focus, it's important and it matters. But if the scoreboard is causing you to focus on the wrong things, you have to get a new scoreboard. And what you just said is, what are you trying to build? Like when I was a sales leader for 15 years, it was never really, what do I want to build? It was, what do I want to build with the money I'm going to make? Because no one ever told me I should think otherwise. right? It
Right.
was like, when's my next promotion? How is our team going to, I mean, I was helping people get better as well. It wasn't like just focused on myself. But if I had ever thought what you just said, and what I talk about a lot with my sales leadership clients are, what are you trying to build? What is the vision of your sales team? What is your team dynamic you're trying to build? The how, yes, you will do that automatically because we in sales, we're just geared towards those metrics and those numbers, and we're going to do it. I've got a client right now putting together an entire sales leadership playbook, and he is very focused. And as they scale, and they're going from about 25 salespeople to about 200 in the next 10 years, like they are. And I know Heartland's hiring too, so I'm going to give you a chance. But he is really focused. How do we keep the culture as we scale? How do we keep a piece of who we are? And you just said that, like Howard. So anyway, I want to stress that because that is never spoken about. I had never heard it spoken about ever. And it's just such an important piece. And you go, aha, I want to be a leader with meaning. I want to help my
Mhm,
salespeople not just become better salespeople, but better people.
mhm,
And then it's really funny, but revenue goes up and retention gets better,
mhm.
and you're recruiting better people, and it's not rocket science.
Well, it goes down to your identity determines your results. Like, who do I want to be as a leader? And then and then am I operating in that ideal? I want to be a leader that people can come to me with some of their fears and doubts and not feeling like they're going to be judged. I want to be a leader that people are able to lean into me and coach me up. I want to be a leader that actually not makes only an impact them as a sales professional, but as a human being, because that can make a greater impact on the world. And that might not seem idealistic, but that's what drives me each and every day, knowing, okay, asking the question in the morning of who can I add value to today? At the end of the day, I ask myself the question of who did I add value to today?
Yep. I can see why Ben said, I'm really lucky that I have Tony as a sales leader. People say that they spelt that off a lot. What you just said, um, but they don't mean it. And I can tell that you mean that. That is not, you are consistent. Every post you make on LinkedIn, every interaction you and I have had, and I've spoken to some of your sales leaders. I've spoken to your sales team. Like I actually was a speaker at one of your meetings. You're consistent across the board, and I know that that is true. And sometimes if you aren't rooted down, if it's like a new sales leader who was like, well, I don't have that experience that Tony has, how do I get that mindset? You pause and you think about it and you work on it every day, and you'll find yourself 25 years later an experienced person, a much better version of what you ever dreamed you could be, because you just consistently worked at it.
One, I failed a lot. I failed this morning even, you know, and failure, like mistakes, is an opportunity for progress. And when you recognize what your values are, it helps you make better decisions, and you have to revisit them. You have to revisit them. Like, I just renewed the vows of my brother and my sister-in-law on Sunday. They're married for 10 years now, and walking them through their renewing of their vows remind me of, like, well, those are your values. Those are the things that are important. It's easy to forget that in sales. It's easy to get caught up in the shiny objects, and I'm really grateful and appreciative of your kind comments, and I believe my team makes me, not only people I get the opportunity to lead, but the people that lead me, and it takes a while for that to happen. It doesn't happen overnight. Rome wasn't built overnight, it was built brick by brick, and the experiences you go through, even though they may suck, right? One of my mentors told me, he goes, Tony, the more things you go through, the more people you can relate to, the more people you can make an impact with, and I truly believe that.
Yep, that is so so true. Yes. So let's I just know Heartland just got this big recognition as one of the best organizations to sell for. And I know you guys are hiring. So I would love for you to just share that, because I know that working with you, and there's some other leaders at Heartland I'm connected with that are phenomenal leaders as well. And you're not just in Wisconsin, but can you
Right.
share a little bit for people who are interested and say, oh, well, that might be the type of leader that I want to work with, or, oh, that might be the type of organization that I might want to work with to help build my sales leadership skills. Because I know they do a lot of this stuff in house.
Right. Well, so we're a national company, right? We work in the technology world. We provide business solutions for businesses, all like back office solutions for businesses. A lot of B2B business. I think I ask people this question a lot. It's like, how do you want to live? And then you find something that allows you to live that way. So my example to this would be, is I wanted to be that dad that was at my kids' games because my dad wasn't. He was working sunrise to sunset all the time, and I wanted to be that person that can say, you know what, I can take care of my mom. You know, I can take care of my sisters. You know, my brother's I come from a family of 9 children, and I wanted to be a six-figure earner. And I knew it wasn't going to happen overnight. It was going to take work, but I wanted a place that one that I can lay my head on my pillow each night, knowing that I'm doing the right thing and making a difference. I'm supporting my local business community, and that it's at the forefront. Right, we're leading the charge. It's a disruptor, and that's the reason why I came to Heartland back in 2007, 15 years ago. So I think someone who wants work-life harmony, I'm not talking about balance, work-life harmony. Work-life balance is a whole nother subject for me. I was with my territory managers yesterday and they took me on this charter fishing excursion. They bought me for Christmas. And afterwards we sat at lunch and we're talking about vacations. Like I was talking to Ben. Ben's phenomenal, right, by the way.
We're gonna
Um,
tag Ben, and like he got so many shout outs during this.
right. But one of the things is like each year we choose one word, right? One word to be our focus for the year. Because you can forget about your goals, but you can always remember one word. And one of his words, like actually it's on my board here. This year, Ben is big. He wants to be big, live big. Well, he's taking so many vacations this year. We're laughing about it. We're laughing about it. And he's having a stellar year, And I look at, my other managers like Sarah, and Michelle. Um, they came here because they believed in themselves. They didn't want to have their compensation limited, and they want to have that work-life harmony kind of thing, right? They understood that there's freedom in this role. You earn the freedom, but you got to respect the freedom. So if you're someone that wants to have growth, not only personal growth but also leadership growth, we are growing with leaders in this company. We're in big time expansion mode right now. Um, if you want an opportunity to have some flexibility, yeah, we have a system, we have a playbook that we really adhere to, but we want to manage the playbook versus managing people. And if you're someone that wants training and support, we got a lot of it. We have virtual trainers, we got online training, we got in the field training. And the cool thing is, we get to help people each and every day and get paid for it very well. So if anyone's interested, simply send me a DM on it. Look in your LinkedIn profile for a division sales manager. We're hiring for our payment side as well as our payroll HR side. And like literally, like just looking now today, in the last 2 days, I've already had 17 people apply because I think the word is out. The secret is out. And it's cool. Like I get to still coach. I coach sports. I took 20 days off between May and June. Now I've been here for a while. I've earned that.
Mm-hmm.
But and my coolest thing, my leader, her name is Laura. She says, go out and enjoy it. Turn off your emails. Like your team's got it. I got it. Don't worry about that. And that left me a lot of peace, knowing that, you know what, I can go out there and be me and live the life that I want to live.
Yep. That's amazing. This what's always fun about me having actual still practicing sales leaders, because
Mhm.
I'm not a practicing sales leader anymore. What I love about it is when people watch us, when other leaders or other sales people watch us, they almost get to like check you out ahead of time, right? And be like, oh, because sales leadership is really a competitive advantage. So people leave organizations because of their sales leader. They're also looking for great sales leaders. And so I'm so thankful that you took the time today to share your thoughts with us. It's a great opportunity to get insight into your brain, how you're structured, how your team actually works. And if people really are looking for that work-life harmony, I love that. I love that. That phrase, and they're looking for a new opportunity, they definitely know where to find you. So thank you so much for joining me today.
Rebecca, thank you. Like, I thoroughly enjoy our conversations, and I always leave with something. and I just to see, how you've made the impact with other sales organizations, leadership, like, even stepping on our team when you're a guest, we're talking to our leadership team. I mean, those little nuggets and experience you bring, you've actually made this leadership not only an art, but you bring in the science behind it too. So I appreciate that about you.
Thank you. Look at now we feel so good. Look at we both compliment each other. Now we're gonna go through the rest of our day feeling like 10 out of 10.
Heck yeah, let's do it. Onward and upwards.
Onward is an upward.